couldn't really think about the year 2000. It seems so far away. And yet here we are now in 2017. It's quite amazing, really. But anyway, 1999 was the Bologna Declaration. I'm sure you will know about this. It's a really important meeting of the higher education ministers from the member countries. And that declaration was to encourage QA within higher education. And they said, to be fair to them, they could have just said, it's a good thing, guys, come on, you must do it, and gone home. But no, they actually wanted action. So the action was, they said, you've got to develop criteria that are reasonably comparable and methods. And because of that, they then produced the ESG 2005, which a committee produced. Things have moved on so quickly from 2005, and I will be talking about that later, because we now have an ESG 2015, which is what we are working with. And to deliver that, of course, they had ENQA, which was responsible for it. Anyway, this ESG is really spreading. The influence of it is spreading. And it is, no question, it is a reference point for European higher education. I think we need to have a little think about why. What is the importance of this external QA, these visitations? Why do we actually have it? Well, number one, it provides accountability to the stakeholders that I was talking about, students and the staff and the veterinarians and government. It provides accountability because it is asking questions about the quality of the program, quality of the product, and the standards of it. It also provides, and I've really quoted this from ESG, although I think the English is a bit, I'm trying to work in English, I would say staid, but it's overcomplicated, the English, but let me try and explain. It provides an objective. In other words, it's providing a system where you can actually measure QA, but also it provides for the development of QA. QA doesn't stand still. We've done it. We can go home now. It's got to be shown to be responding to changes and developing within the institution. And that development of QA, as well as the current QA, is really important, that you can show that in your SCRs, that you have thought about QA, not as well as now, in the future. And you have a system of responding to developments in a QA system. Now, as far as QA in higher education, I'm not just talking about veterinary schools, I'm talking about all higher education in Europe. These external evaluations, they either focus, as EasyVet does, on one thing, a study program, veterinary schools. But there are plenty of QA visitations that have a look at institutions. In other words, the whole of the university. And I guess in Spain you may probably have the same thing, that you have your QA coming to look at you as a school, but they also, I would be very surprised if they don't, are looking at QA within Madrid University and all the other universities as well. Or a combination of both. So again, as far as today's concerned, we will be talking about EasyVet, one study program, but do remember that you are probably part of a much wider QA system. So again, to me, it comes down to, because these are all quotes from the, following the Bologna Declaration and ESG, 2015, all that would fit in to easy vet. Easy vet of Eve. Now, this is an important body because they're the ones who are driving QA in Europe. ENQA, European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. I went to their General Assembly a few months ago, at the end of last year. It was actually in the UK, not far from Bristol, a city called Gloucester, about 20 miles, 30 miles north, 40 kilometres north of Bristol. And so I was there for a couple of days, and it's very interesting listening to ENQA. I was the only vet there, but I came away from that meeting realising that this is an important group who are, in English we would say, I don't know if you know what I mean, they're flexing their muscles. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, they're young, but they want to be important. And they are important, because they're only 16 years old. 16 years ago, we were already doing visitation. We had been doing visitations for years before that in veterinary schools. They've only just recently started, but I can tell you they're really thinking that we being ENQA, are the group who are responsible for QA in higher education. So you must be aware of what it is, and they have a very efficient website, very efficient, lots of reports, both of ENQA visitations and SERs from people who they're visiting. It's a very useful site from QA. So those of you who are doing QA in your universities, be fully aware of ENQA on it. Already in 16 years, they have over 100 QA agencies within all the different countries in our union. So a lot have applied successfully and are members of ENQA. So they've got 48 full members, and Eve is hoping to be a full member later this year in 26 countries. Now, to begin with, they were very much national QAs. So in Spain, I know that both in the Spanish, in fact, actually there's, even within Spain, you have different groups. I think in North Spain there is a different QA agency. I can't quite remember the name of it now. Is it what? Yes, that's it. That's so already, I noticed there, I was looking at their report actually recently. So ENQA, most of their members are national QA agencies, like the QA agency in the UK, which is, it's actually QAA, Quality Assurance Agency for UK. Their members, they are national. However, they are now looking at European-wide subject-specific, in other words, like Eve. And so but I find that they are, at this stage, they're not quite used to it. They don't fully understand, in my opinion, that we have got to look at all these different nations with different QA policies, rather than just one. Now they claim, which they do, is that they're trying to support the development of what they call independent, but I put that in brackets, but trustworthy. By that I mean you've got to do what ENQA wants you to do. QA agencies operating, they have very specific standards. And if you don't fit their standards, then they won't accept you as a member. They also will, though, to be fair, provide expertise when needed. And those of you who are developing some of your QA systems in your schools, you'll find them very helpful if you did want some advice. And it's definitely the reference point now internationally. for QA in Europe. In 2013, in my opinion, too soon for Eve, Eve did try evaluation, and they applied for evaluation at that stage on it. And they were not granted membership. This was a bit of a shock for some of the senior people in Eve. Found your glasses.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, I think, at this stage to think about some of the comments of what ENQA said after that visitation on it. And I will be going through that a bit more at the moment. The reason why I'm really quite keen at the moment, and the reason I was hoping to have a look at Madrid yesterday, but after breakfast and all day I'm working on the report, a new report we're producing for ENQA, because Pierre said, Philip, we need it next week. So I didn't have time to be a tourist. I had to sit and do some work. Anyway, what did ENQA say? Well, I mentioned this before. They said, and I'm quoting from them, immediately consider revising the evaluation methods and the stage 2 evaluations. They picked this up as well, which I was very pleased about, that they wanted QA to have a general review of the Higher Education Institute, HEI, and not just QA documents. So they themselves thought that the stage 1, stage 2 policy of Eve was incorrect, which is what we've now changed. They also criticised Eve in that we did not involve students sufficiently in the evaluation process, which we now do, of course. In fact, we did in those days, but the choice of students was very much up to the chair, which was a personal thing. Now our students come from the IVSA, International Veterinary Students Association. So it's the students themselves who make a decision on who is coming into the team, which is much better, much fairer system. So that was another criticism that they had. They also felt that Eve did not have sufficient relations with its internal and external stakeholders. And I'm mentioning these now to you because although this is ENQA looking at Eve, it also, you can think about it in terms of your own QA policies in your own SERs, because that is one of the standards. And so please make sure that you do have good relationships. And I'm sure you do, but you have to show that you do. It's no use saying to the committee meeting, oh, of course, we meet stakeholders. The visitation team needs to see evidence of it. And if they can't see evidence, they won't be able to accept it. So you have to have minuted evidence that these relationships with both internal, students and staff and university, external, the people who employ veterinarians, recent graduates, are represented. They're stakeholders. They also said that all members of evaluation teams should undergo an adequate training. I think, Eve, we're only really getting into this. We have the e-learning exam. How many of you have actually done part 1? Is anyone? Yeah, quite a few. A few have done part 1. What about part 2? It's only just come out. Yes. Right, well done. So the e-learning is very new, and it's got quite a lot of work still to do on it, I think. But nevertheless, it is an attempt. We're trying to provide some training to visitors before they join the teams. They also said 10 years between visits is too long. I think they're right. So now it's 7. So every 7 years, Eve will be, through EasyVet, will be running an accreditation of your schools. So that was a criticism from ENQA. And the one that really, really caused Eve to fail was they said Eve must have a system of analysing what happens in veterinary education in Europe. And we were not compliant at all with this standard. And we have now tried to do something about it. And we've got quite a good analysis, which is on the website in Eve, of it. So I hope that we have now corrected it. So as I've been through all those standards, I think Eve is changed and has moved on. And I think that ENQA visit was, in English we would say, a wake-up call. It made us think in Eve, I keep saying us because we're all part of Eve one way and the other. It made us think about, it's all very well us sitting here and we're all evaluating each other and visiting and meeting our friends, etc. But actually there's a big wide world out there and we have to fit in with what others are doing. And we have a responsibility. Eve, of the health professions, the veterinary science is the only one, of the health professions, the only one in Europe that is actually taking seriously the accreditation and the improvement of standards in its schools. Recently, the chiropractor group has done a similar thing, but as far as human medicine is concerned, dentistry, all the different health professions that are with us, they do not have a similar system. And I think that's another important point to make. That's something I think we should all be proud of. This accreditation system that looks after veterinary schools is something fairly unique in Europe and in the world, actually. Anyway, they made another comment that I think is quite an interesting one, because they said, well, Eve, you visit all these places through EasyVet and you make a decision. But the country may not accept it. The school may not accept it. They said, no, we don't agree with you. It's not binding in European countries. And it's up to the individual vet schools to react or not to react to it. That was a criticism, but Eve can't do anything about that. It is very difficult because it's dependent on national policies. And Eve does not have, of course, any direct power over these policies. All it can do is to say, in terms of our standards set, you meet them or you don't meet them. And if you don't meet them, there are one or two more things that you need to put right before a revisit. However, what it does have, it then said, Eve needs to have a think about that on its mission and vision. It's a very difficult one because there's nothing much we could do about it. Oh yeah, before I go to that one, hold on. And what I think though, and I'm trying to put this into the report to ENQA, where we do have an influence in Eve is that all the schools, and especially if there is any unemployment amongst veterinarian graduates, those who employ them are going to say, well, that person comes from a school which is fully accredited. That person does not come from a school which is accredited. That will influence their decision. So it's the marketplace, actually, that is going to be important. That's the reason why schools really do need to be accredited, because your graduates, if they come from a non-accredited school, what about their employment? So that, I think, is quite a powerful reason for driving accreditation. Another one that when I was visiting the vet school in Latvia recently, and also Budapest about 18 months ago, Latvia and Budapest and many other schools in the Slovak Republic as well, Which you see, they're all establishing veterinary schools within their veterinary schools being taught in English. The reason for that is that to attract overseas students who will pay good money. I don't blame them. You look at somewhere like Latvia, quite a country that is quite a poor country, if you know what I'm saying, and to have an overseas student coming in, and I think they charge each overseas student, I'm guessing now, but I think it was something like about 6,000 or 7,000, maybe a bit less, 5,000 or 6,000 euros a year. Now, if that individual was coming from UK, we charge our UK veterinary students about 11,000 euros a year, a lot of money. It doesn't seem to stop them applying. In Bristol, we have 120 places every year, and last year we had 1,450 applications. So we're oversubscribed, easily oversubscribed on it. I mean, we don't have time to go for the reasons why that is. 85–90% are female now, and it is seen as a profession ideally suited for females within. I mean, not only because they're cleverer, which they certainly do their exams better than the boys for one reason or the other, and so when you have a course that is really tough to get into, and much tougher to get into vet school in the UK than it is to get into medical school, you do not need the standards to get into medical school, but the same with vets. So you're having an input of extremely highly intellectually gifted children, well, they're not children because they're all 18, adults on it. But the reason I mention this is that there are a lot of people in the UK, also in France, in Germany, who cannot get into veterinary school. Netherlands as well, Sweden, Finland. A lot of those countries in the north of the EU have too many applicants, and so many of them will try and get into a school, some of these new schools in Budapest, Latvia, etc. So that is the reason why they must be accredited, because why would you want to go to a school that's not accredited? And in free movement, you can go back again to your own country. So that took me a bit of a long while to describe that, but you can see what I mean, I hope. Yeah, they also criticised us that we didn't have a code of conduct. I think that's a very good point. We now do. So if you go onto the website, you will find our code of conduct. We never had that before. And that's actually very important, that all our experts and people working within Eve, we must have a code that we can keep to. And if we do something wrong, we can say, didn't you read the code? It's in there. We must have a standard on it. Right, now, I found so many acronyms. Now, this is one, I don't know if you've come across this one, I hadn't, called Equivet. When I first saw this, I thought, this is very exciting. A European veterinary that I have never heard of. Maybe there's even another Eve that we don't know about. Well, actually, it's the EU Quality Assurance and Vocational Education and Training, called Equivet, an acronym. But they've got nothing to do with veterinarians. But they are much more interested in people who are working in support staff, for want of a better word, not professional. But I just thought it was interesting that how you have to be careful of some of these acronyms, which the EU love acronyms. There's masses and masses of different acronyms, shortage of what, like EVE and EasyVet. Anyway, so we don't worry about that one. One that's more important to us, though, is EQUIP, enhancing quality through innovative policy and practice. Again, I bet many of you haven't come across this on it. But EQUIP was really following the ESG 2015. Its aim at enhancing quality through innovative new policy and practice in higher education in Europe by supporting the embedding of the ESG at grassroots level. That's exactly what you all should be doing in terms of your SCRs. And this was a project set up, and they looked at all the challenges. Now, their main target group was higher education, not specifically vets. In fact, they don't even mention veterinary schools, actually. They're looking at everything, the whole world of higher education at university level in Europe. I have got a website here that if you wanted to have a look at, because they have promoted ESG 2015. They did have training events, which sadly have now finished, and I couldn't get to any of them. But they have got a useful document, which I've got on the web there. And by the way, if you wanted a copy of my PowerPoint presentation, I'm very happy to present with you, and I think it could be downloaded here. I think looking at the Dean, it could be available to you on it. I think I had an email last night from the French-speaking people in Paris, and they've already sent it to all the delegates. So if you do that, then you will be able to have a look at this very useful document, which is comparing 2005 ESG and 2015. It shows the changes on it. I'm just going to talk a little about AVMA, and then actually I'm just going to stop for a few minutes, because otherwise we're just going to keep talking. It probably isn't time for coffee yet, but I must admit I just need something to drink, otherwise I'm going to lose my voice on it. But I just really, I've also given you another web page for AVMA. Are any vet schools in Spain or Portugal AVMA accredited? No, I don't think so, no. In the French-speaking group, they are thinking about it. Nantes is thinking about it, it's made up. But there are other schools, Utrecht, and two or three in the UK, who are accredited with AVMA. So, in a way, this doesn't really matter to you at the moment if you are not planning to be accredited on it. I put it in here because when I'm talking throughout Europe, I'm going to visit some places where AVMA accreditation is important to them. So that's the reason I would have that. I've been on accreditation visits both in Europe, like I was one recently in Utrecht, that was a combined EVE AVMA visitation. We have one in UK, but I can't be a member there because I'm British. But it's a similar thing, joint visits. And their standard, when you look at that list, their standard 11 is more to do with outcome assessment. They are assessing the outcome, the graduates, the exams, the quality of it. And they are not, in my opinion, pushing hard for a QA approach in their program. And it's a difference between it. The other thing I would say about AVMA, they are based in America, Illinois, I think, and they have an enormous team of people. The AVMA office is full of, I don't know, I haven't counted how many are there. I suspect there must be at least 20, 30 members of staff in AVMA. EVE have a part-time director, Pierre. We have Laura, who is full-time. And back from maternity leave this week, we have Shuzi, who is part-time. That is all we have in the office. I think that's incredible. Is EVE bigger than AVMA in terms of its work? And yet, it is running on a very efficiently small amount because we pay into EVE. EVE pays for itself. That's how we do it. And again, I think that's an important concept because we rely, EVE, on volunteers. All of us, this right. If it wasn't for volunteers saying, yes, I will be an expert, yes, I will be a chair, yes, I will help write that report. I don't expect to get paid for it, but yes, it's my duty, I feel. And that's, I think,